Andy?
Hey, Sean.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Hey, thanks for taking the time. You know, when you do your Friday afternoon updates there on YouTube, the Miles Franklin YouTube channel,
Yeah.
your latest is called Calm Before the Storm. And I got to tell everybody, man, that is, it's an educational tool, even for those of us who really try to follow this stuff day in, day out. I was taking notes on your latest, Andy. It's hard to know where to begin.
Yeah, I feel like I write so much in a week that it's a good way of summarizing it. But I think the most important thing is because there's so much focus on this stupid NFP report every month, which is the biggest scam of all time. There's not a single aspect of it that's truthful, other than the fact that the internals always give away just how bad the employment situation is. But I wrote a piece maybe 2 or 3 months ago called 3.0% Nuff said. And basically what I was saying was there is no way on the planet that the Fed will ever let the 10-year Treasury rate go over 3.0% if they have to hyperinflate the dollar to do it. And so when I saw the rates had crept up to 2.8% on the 10-year, I wrote on both Wednesday and Thursday, the odds are extremely high that they will put out a, quote, worse than expected number to aid them in, as I call it, QEing rates back down. And sure enough, worse than expected, and the rate went from 2.8 to 2.7 in a day.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I go to the club and I run on the treadmill, I always watch CNN and Fox. That's what keeps me busy as I run a half hour. And you can take in a lot of fake news in a half hour. And it was funny how on Friday night they were just beating to death the good news from the NFP report, which was the way they were spinning it, that the economy had added, I don't remember what the number was, 192,000 jobs or whatever their lies were. But you note that most of those jobs come from this birth-death model, and they're fictional jobs. Can you explain that for people? What is this birth-death model?
Well, actually, if you're watching CNN, probably all they were still talking about is this airplane in Malaysia. That's all they talk about all day long. Because
That's
when I'm
right.
in the
Well,
gym,
you know
it's
what's
the same
funny?
thing.
You know what's funny, man? I
Yeah.
joke with my wife about that coverage of the missing Malaysian plane, that what's been hijacked is real news. They've hijacked
Right.
real news and information from CNN for the past month to cover this missing plane.
Right. And Jon Stewart's done some funny stuff on how they're not even, again, we've talked about it before, they're not even news anymore. All they do is speculate about what might happen. It's no different than what we see in a lot of the newsletter writer community. What we do here, what you do, we talk about fact. And that's what gives us credibility in this world. And sadly, the news networks have lost it. But you ask about the birth death model. Now, that came around, I'm going to say, about 15 years ago. The government created the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Basically, since all the jobs were en masse going to China and never to come back, they created this statistical tool that enabled them to add jobs to the economy, phantom jobs, without the backup of actual jobs data coming to them. And it's theoretically supposed to be kind of a zero-sum model where some months, there's a seasonal adjustment down and some up, but, it turns out that they've added millions and millions of these phantom jobs over the past 15 years, some months more than others. And, in this particular month, there was 75,000 phantom jobs. And when you look at the actual jobs data that came in, almost all the jobs to start with were low-paying service jobs, most of them minimum wage, a lot temp help, most of them not in productive industries. There's a lot in education, healthcare, which produce absolutely no GDP. And of course, the tiny amount of jobs that were, quote, manufacturing, which was only 25,000 out of 192, can solely be attributed to the birth-death model, meaning they really didn't occur. And I would say if you took the birth-death model out, you probably on average would have 50 to 100,000 less jobs per month over the course of a year.
Well, you note, too, in your Calm Before the QE Storm update that what we're really documenting, what we're witnessing is the death of the United States economy, essentially. We're watching it breathe its last gasps. And what you're doing is you're documenting the collapse. What we're doing together in reporting this news is we're documenting the collapse, which maybe should be the title of this one. Hey, did you see that original article from Michael Snyder that came out this week, that 9 out of the top 10 occupations in the United States pay less than $35,000 a year?
Yeah, you know, Mike Snyder is one of the best. He had another one last week, 97 taxes that you're paying. You know, again, the government not only lies about the inflation rate across the board, but some of the most important inflationary aspects are taxes, whether it's income taxes or sales taxes or surcharges or other things that aren't even called taxes. For instance, this new budget deal where they say, "Oh, we're not raising taxes to cover things," but that what they're doing is increasing fees and surcharges, just not calling them taxes. And as for the death of the economy, yes, part of it was look in time. You know, we had this brief period of time after the two world wars where we were the leader in the world, and you know now the world's catching up. The Eastern Hemisphere is taking the jobs, and you know we're going to become a middle of the road economy, which sadly is still living with the greatest standard of living because of the reserve currency status, which is going to go away. And yeah, the jobs are, you know, the good jobs are gone. The inflation is still there and getting worse, but the high paying jobs, I mean, real wages peaked 40 plus years ago in the 1970s. And yeah, I do, part of what I do is documenting the economy and the gold manipulation for posterity, just like Gaddis does, just like Harvey Organ does, and just like you're doing on your podcasts.
There's so much to talk about. Again, from your update, I was taking copious notes here, and we can talk about China, we can talk about the yen and Japan, we can talk about plummeting sentiment in the precious metal space while record buying has occurred. But I wanted to throw this at you, and I just wanted to remind everybody that if we're documenting the collapse, I think it should be restated that we've seen these dead bankers, these mysterious deaths of bankers. And there's been a lot of drama at JP Morgan specifically. So I just wanted to get your take on this. And just a quick review. Gabriel McGee, a 39-year-old JP Morgan employee, fell from the roof of the JP Morgan European headquarters in London on January 27th. Then there was Ryan Henry Crane, a 37-year-old executive at JP Morgan who allegedly committed suicide in early March, and no details of his death have been released. Then there was the death of Kenneth Belando, 28, a trader at Levy Capital, formerly an investment banking analyst at JP Morgan, who jumped to his death from his sixth floor east side apartment. And now more recently here on March 25th, the second man in power at JP Morgan, Michael Kavanaugh, has announced that he's leaving JP Morgan to work for Carlyle Group, a source of real evil on the planet, in my opinion, for a $10 million a year pay cut. And now on April 2nd, Blythe Masters, the commodity chief at JP Morgan, is leaving. And Masters, as everyone knows, is a pioneer in credit default swaps, who is also under investigation for making, quote, false and misleading statements, end quote, under oath to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Boy, when we document the collapse, Andy, if you look at what's going on at JP Morgan, doesn't it kind of suggest that that's what we're seeing, the sinking of the ship? The rats are fleeing the ship?
Well, the way I look at JP Morgan, they are the government. I don't even think of them as I mean, yes, they have an aspect of them where they're a public company and they have a stock and they report to shareholders, but they've essentially you can say the government commandeered them or vice versa. But you know what they do is they run the nation. And yeah, there's been a lot of shuffling around. I mean, you know, I'm not going to speculate about all the bankers. It's certainly a coincidence that you've had 8 or 9 of them suddenly commit suicide, and some of them at JP Morgan. But look, there's a lot of shifting around. There's a lot of bad things going on in the company, and clearly, you know, behind the scenes, and it doesn't surprise me at all. You know, but these other topics we're talking about, you know, China and Japan. I mean, they're only going to contribute to the angst behind the scenes because everything is going in the wrong direction of the powers that be. Their goal is to kick the can and maintain the status quo. And in every one of these places, the fruits of their of the money printing are showing. I mean, China's credit and construction bubble. I think it is the by far the biggest of all time. I mean, it's making what happened in the United States in 2000 and 2007 look like nothing, because the government not only printed all this money to peg the yuan to the dollar for all these years, but they pretty much fostered an environment with literally no regulation to the point where this shadow banking industry, where private companies and lenders were you know, they were funding these ghost cities, and now you have $23 trillion of this debt, which is unraveling. The credit is dried up. The companies are defaulting. The government is now widened the trading band on the yuan to botch it further to, you know, to offset the declining economy. Things are going to get so ugly there. I can't even imagine what the impact's going to be on the world, and what the impact on the currency war that's going on is going to be. And then, of course, you have Japan, which they finally initiated that new sales tax, national sales tax. It started 3 days ago. It went from 5% to 8%, and it'll go to 10% next year. And this is an economy which, as we speak, is having a literally collapse of its GDP is flat, and that's it's generously accounted for GDP. It's showing multi-year highs in inflation, multi-year highs in gasoline prices. Their trade deficit is falling off the face of the earth right now, and this is just as Abenomics is halfway done in the sales tax increases. I really truly believe that Japan will be the first, quote, first world nation to experience hyperinflation in the 21st century.
I think you're right, and I think what's going to happen in Japan is going to make even what happened in Zimbabwe look like child's play because Japan is what the world's third, fourth biggest economy.
Yeah, and I mean Zimbabwe didn't even Zimbabwe had a banana currency to start with. The Japanese yen is, it's a real, as you said, it's the third largest economy. In fact, it just got passed by China as number two,
Yeah.
and it has a very widely spread currency. I mean, the dollar may be the reserve currency, but if you look at a basket, the reserve currency doesn't mean that every currency reserve in the world is dollars. It just means it's the most. But I think it's something like 10 plus percent of the world's currency reserves are in yen. So we're talking about a massive, massive global impact as the yen is debauched. It hit a new multi-year low the other day, and it's gotten to the point where Shinzo Abe is going to get what he wants. The yen will, in fact, plunge because they are going to double up on Abenomics sometime in the next 6 months. There's no doubt about it, and they're going to do it. Remember, the ECB is on the verge of announcing their own QE. They all but said it on Thursday, and then they even leaked to the press that they have $1 trillion plan that's being mapped out right now. They conveniently leak it, and then one of the guys says, "No, no, no, wait, I don't know what you're talking about." But believe me, it's real and it's coming. I mean, they've talked. They had the head of the Bundesbank. The Bundesbank is the most hawkish group in the entire European Union. He was out. His name is Weidman just earlier this week saying, "Yeah, we're absolutely looking at the possibility of negative deposit rates, which is its own crazy inflationary psychotic thought to start with, as well as QE." I mean, look, again, all this stuff is lies. Of course, they've been QEing. They're pretending that it's all just Draghi's whatever it takes promise. But the fact is, of course, they've been printing money, and of course, the Fed has been helping them out. Remember, they still have that swap agreement with the Fed, where the Fed can lend money to European banks ad infinitum, except because they call it a swap instead of a loan, it's off balance sheet like a derivative, and it doesn't show up as money printing. But it's a major form of monetizing the European banks. And now that whenever you see, and I wrote this piece called Deflation and Recovery the other day, when you see the bankers start to talk about the word deflation, 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 it means they're preparing the printing presses for a major turn upward. And they're literally trying to fool the people into believing that because their fraudulent CPI numbers or their core CPI numbers are not rising, that means there's deflation. But I mean, it's laughable because I mean, in the United States alone, we've had a 20% food price across the board increase in the first 3 months of this year. Gasoline prices are at seasonal highs. We're not even in the driving season yet. In Europe, I mean, they're still paying almost $10 per gallon of gas. And the articles, I put one in my piece the other day. Again, I saw in the UK, it says, because of the weather, gasoline prices are stubbornly high. I mean, it's always an excuse. It's never the fact that they're printing too much money. And then, of course, as I say, the coup de grace is going to be when Whirlybird Janet is forced to say no, not only no more tapering, but we're going to actually be increasing the QE. And in fact, I wrote a piece called "Proof of the Tapering Mirage" a few months ago. They haven't tapered anything. They haven't. If anything, I would say they've been printing more money. This is an elaborate political scheme to try to make it look like the Fed has some credibility. While they were doing it, they were literally hoping and praying that the economy would get better and therefore somehow would work. But you know what? The economy is getting worse. and the foreign selling of treasuries is only increasing, which means they're going to have to print more, all else equal, simply to sop up the foreign demand. So I can't believe that we'll get through 2014 without the, as I said, the QE storm hitting full force. I think we're just in the eye right now.
Well, before we talk about the high-frequency trading scandal, Michael Lewis's new book, Flash Boys, I wanted to ask if you had seen there on Friday that Hillary Clinton attended the Women in the World Forum in New York City and took the stage with Christine Lagarde from the IMF. There's a moment where they high-fived. And I just think it's funny. The reason I bring it up is because now so many of the lies are in the open, and those of us who are no longer sheeple and have the glasses on that allow us to see the truth, everything's in the open. And when you see Lagarde from the IMF and Clinton, the former Secretary of State that really does all of the evil doing on behalf of the criminal government that runs our nation, on stage high-fiving, it just is one of those moments that just, it makes you laugh.
Well, I didn't see that. That's pretty ugly. I mean, Christine Lagarde, I was just reading what she wrote the other day. I mean, she just continues to say, we have no inflation. She's another. We have deflation. We need the euro, the ECB, and the Bank of Japan to continue with their printing money. I mean, this is what they say. And then the next article will say, we need more austerity and tighter measures for lending. So we need to print more money, but we need to choke out the banks. I mean,
Yeah.
The IMF has got to be the most evil institution on the planet. All they do is destroy and pillage.
Yeah, and what they want to do to Ukraine
Yeah.
is insane. They want to roll out the most severe austerity measures seen yet. And it's funny that the U.S. government just seized Crimea's gold. And now the IMF is going to roll in with, what, 16 billion, 18 billion, whatever it is, and then hold the people at the end of the barrel of a gun to reduce their pensions by 50%, to reduce, their health.
Yeah, they want to bail in, bail out. As for the Ukrainian gold, that's speculation. I mean, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It seems almost ridiculous how would they have gotten their gold, and why would Ukraine give it to them? But some people believe that it happened, and I mean, I wouldn't put it past our government to do anything. But the thing that's sad when you say Hillary Clinton and Lagarde is all the people. There were so many people that used to be at one point in their lives idealistic and I had respect for. I did have respect for Hillary Clinton. Forget the stuff with the whatever their Watergate thing was. I
Whitewater?
forgot what. Yeah, Whitewater. I'm saying she was a hardworking lawyer, and then she did work hard initially to try to do the healthcare thing when she was the first lady, and Christine Lagarde when she was the finance minister of France. You look back at the old interviews. She seemed to have her head in the right place, but once they get in the middle of the government machine, they turn into monsters. I mean, Hillary Clinton, it's hard to believe it's the same woman. Christine Lagarde, it's hard to believe she's even a human. And even, another person who's a perfect example of that is I had a lot of respect for John Kerry back when he was running for president. But you put him in the Secretary of State position, and all of a sudden, he's just a machine for the government, just a monster. And it's really sad, what government is doing to people these days.
Well, the Clinton death list, when Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas, there's certainly a lot of dead bodies that surrounded the two of them when he was in power, and there's a lot of CIA drug running accusations down in Arkansas. But your point's well taken. These people only seem to get more evil as they ascend, to the throne of power. It's kind of like that show House of Cards. It's Kevin Spacey's character seems to only get more and more evil as his thirst for power grows.
Yeah, well, it's hard to believe, in our position in life, we've just been in a position to try to work hard, feed our families and maybe do some good in the world. And then we're faced with people who are, I relate in a lot of ways. I related to the movie Fargo. I've written about it many times where, the guy needed some money and that was his only real issue.
Mm-hmm.
But as he got deeper into the scheme, he just, and more people showed up dead, and by the end, everyone was dead and corrupted, and I think that's what happens once you get stuck in this status quo maintenance system, where the only way to do it is to do illegal things.
Yeah. Speaking of illegal things, before we talk about precious metals briefly, let's talk about the HFT scandal. Lots of things blowing up on CNBC the other day with the Michael Lewis interview. And just so everybody knows, Michael Lewis is no schlub. He's written Moneyball, Liar's Poker, The Blind Side, which was turned into a movie, Boomerang. He's a smart guy, but you're a smart guy. You've written about high frequency trading for a long time. Why don't you give us the cliff notes on what's going on here?
Sure. Yeah, and it's funny. And Michael Lewis became famous for writing Liar's Poker because he was a banker at Solomon Brothers back in the 80s, and he became kind of a whistleblower, pretty much like me. I was a banker or I was an analyst at Solomon or Solomon Smith Barney in the 90s, and I left disgusted with what I had seen. And we had seen both had seen different kinds of scandals, but both of what we saw doesn't compare to what we see today. And yes, he's become the one of the best whistleblowing book writers, and he's writing about high frequency trading, which, this is no surprise. My article the other day was called "Is the Market Rigged?" because that's what he said on TV, and that's what all the media is jumping all over that phrase. Of course, it's rigged. I mean, high frequency trading has been a plague on the markets. They've destroyed every aspect of free markets we've had. But to me, the bigger issue, I mean, to me, for high frequency trading is more just a tool of the bad guys than anything. The real issue with non-free markets is not the scalping of trades here and there. It's the fact that the government uses these algorithms and these high frequency trades as a means of moving the markets where they want them. We want the gold market down, so we naked short into oblivion, and the high frequency trading tools just make it easier. We want the stock market up, so every day at 10 o'clock we buy it. Every day at the close we do a Hail Mary, and the same with bonds and whatever they want. It's just an advanced tool, to maintain market control, just like derivatives have become an advanced tool to maintain leverage in markets. And he's absolutely right. And if they couldn't get rid of this stuff soon enough, but they never will. It'll always be around. It's too late. The Pandora's box is open.
Well, before we wrap up here, let's talk about precious metals. In your column before the QE storm update, you talk about precious metals attacks and really how the powers that be use the NFP data to just manipulate the market in general. But these precious metals attacks, which have essentially lowered the price of silver, and I think gold still, even in 1300s, is probably still less than the average cost of the production of 1 ounce. But you note that this manipulation is giving people what may be the last opportunity to buy below the cost of production. You noted that you're seeing record buying despite plunging sentiment. Can you just shake that out for us? What's really going on in the precious metals markets?
Yeah, I mean, look, this has been going on, this manipulation now for 15 years, and heck, you can go back to the 60s with the London Gold Pool. But just like the global financial system broke in 2008, the cartel stair-stepped what they were doing in 2011 when gold hit a new all-time high, and so did silver. That's when they went berserk, and they've become so blatant since that time. It makes all else before that pale in comparison, and nothing compares to what we've seen really starting last April with those big attacks where they took gold down $250 in 3 days for no real reason. And it's gone on and on and on. But as a result of these severe paper attacks, we have seen absolutely skyrocketing global demand. I mean, even the U.S. Mint, the Silver Eagles, I mean, broke a record last year, and now they're shattering that pace this year. They're rationing, and it's not even a crisis. Gold, you saw China's import demand, which isn't even a whole portion of the whole thing, was double the record of 2012, and now it's already started at a pace 30% higher. Everyone was talking about the Indian tariffs. Even last year, the Indian imports were barely lower than the record level last year, and of course, they're going to be getting rid of those imports now because the people are going to vote the Congress party out next month. So, across the board on an international basis, you're seeing soaring demand. And yes, we are way below the cost of production. I mean, in silver, just the operating price that they need is in the mid 20s at the least. But we're talking about if you want what the real price needs to be, it has to be high enough that not only are they operating profitable, but that they actually can replace reserves and grow them. So we're probably talking over $30 in silver. In gold, it's easily over $1,500. The CEO of Goldfields, which is the fourth largest gold company in the world, said it's got to be 1,500 to replace reserves. And look at the reserves. They were, I mean, I would say on average, the average miner wrote off 25% of their reserves last year. So yeah, we are down on at technically oversold levels. From a production standpoint, we're oversold levels, and of course, fundamentally, we've never been at a point where the fundamentals were this strong with all the money printing going on and what's going to be seen in the coming years. Strangely, United States, you're not seeing that kind of demand. Miles Franklin has not had particularly robust business, nor have many of our competitors in the last year. That's why a lot of the ones that were doing unsavory things or trying to trade for very low margins, gold, have been going out of business, and that's why we've gotten stronger, because we don't pander to that. But I expect that the North American demand is going to come back with a vengeance, like we saw it in 2011 and 2012. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, and for anybody that takes exception to this conversation about precious metals currently being priced below the cost of production, take a look at this great article written by our friend Steve over at SRS Rocco Report. The title of it is The Grand Deception in the Precious Metals Industry. We sticky posted it for a good day or so at SGT Report, and it's very detailed, it's very lengthy, and it's very good. And, facts are facts, and that's what we like to talk about here. I know sometimes that this conversation gets long in the tooth for people who've been hearing, oh, the collapse is coming, the collapse is here, the collapse is near for a very long time. I get it. But what we've just talked about in this conversation is that Andy's predicting that Japan will be the first world nation to suffer hyperinflation in the 21st century, and that China is now suffering the biggest government-fostered construction, real estate, and credit bubble the world has ever seen. And then there's all the trillions in derivatives risks that are tied to all of it. So really, Andy, what this conversation has been about is documenting the collapse. And since we know it is coming and it's tangible, it's quantifiable, which is what we've tried to demonstrate here right now on this call, maybe people should pick up the phone and get physical precious metals in their hands at Miles Franklin.
Sure. Again, remember milesfranklin.com. Myself, David Scheckman, Bill Holter, write a free blog every day. It's available on the website, or you can have it emailed. And if you have any questions, we've been around 25 years. We're celebrating our anniversary this year. Just call us 800-822-8080. And of course, you can always email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
Well, our guest has been the one and only Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin, milesfranklin.com. Andy, as always, we certainly do appreciate your time.
And I appreciate your doing what you do, Sean. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Andy. You guys, thank you so much for listening, and do check us out at sgtreport.com for real news 24/7. Thanks for watching.